General Yakubu Gowon, after benefiting from a coup and the assassination of Aguiyi Ironsi, who in turn benefited from the assassination of key political leaders in the northern and western part of Nigeria at that time, led the Nigerian state in the fight against Biafra during the Civil War. But this story is not about his bravery and contributions to the unity of Nigeria. It's a story of how men of the same nation he had fought to keep together stabbed him in the back and gave him a taste of the food he served others. July 29, 1975, Kampala, Uganda. A day that began with the promise of a new dawn was instead the beginning of an end, for a nation and for one man. General Yakubu Gowon, the leader of Nigeria, woke up to a day like any other, unaware that it would be his last as head of state. He was about to learn that power is an illusion, and betrayal a close companion.
Have my speeches been delivered? I must show the collective strength and unity of our continent. But there are strange radio transmissions. It seems there has been a security bridge at home. Abubakar, how many times will I tell you this? I trust my men.
The story begins in Dodan Barracks, a military facility located off Awolowo Road in Ikoyi, Lagos State, Nigeria, a place that served as the official residence of Nigeria's military heads of state at that time. Their officers were finalizing their plans for a coup. By 4 a.m. Lagos time, the speech by Colonel Joseph Nanban Garba was being prepared. General may have spies around. We are dead if he finds out.
Nah, he won't suspect a thing. Colonel, do you think we may be caught?
No, we won't. Now, focus on what must be done.
All units are set. No errors.
Meanwhile, in Kampala, a place 2 hours ahead of Lagos, General Yakubu Gowon, the military head of state of Nigeria, at the time was focused on the day's organization of African Union Summit. It was yet another day of diplomacy, of being in charge. His speeches were prepared, his strategies mapped out. He was at the apex of his authority, seemingly untouchable. But power, they say, is a fickle friend, and hubris, its dangerous cousin. Gowon was so assured, so confident in his own power, so blind to the undercurrents. He did not feel the ground shifting beneath him. He could not hear the whispering winds of change. He was about to learn that power, like sand, is always slipping through your fingers. The thing that gets me is this. They didn't even try to warn him. His own emissary to Lagos was detained, his aircraft seized. And yet, throughout the previous day, as these guys plotted openly, not one person contacted him. It was like he was already a ghost, a leader on borrowed time. Tell me, what's more chilling than that? So there he was, in Kampala, a person who doubles as a former chairman of the organization, delivering a speech about the unity of Africa. Irony, right? Then, the bombshell. Idi Amin, yes, that same Idi Amin you've been told at childhood eats human flesh, handed him a note that informed him he was no longer in charge, that he had been removed in a coup. The note didn't even say who was behind the coup, and he just apparently told Amin that the situation would become clear in time. You have to wonder, what was going through his mind? Even then, he still thought Joseph Garba, who'd just sworn his allegiance a few days before, was on his side. But was he right? He then turned to Governor Farouk and spoke in Hausa, saying words that when translated means, what we have feared at home has happened. Can you imagine the shock? An aide then whispered some information a few moments later, and that was it. At that moment, he knew then that the officer leading this was none other than Joseph Garba himself, The commander, who had just days earlier sworn allegiance. It was more complicated than he'd ever thought possible. What were the signs that he missed? Was he too trusting? Radio signals from Kaduna, Ibadan, Jos all said the same thing. Nighttime operations had succeeded without a fight. Troops had been deployed at critical locations, and Kano was also under control. Senior officers who would have resisted were all contained and put under house arrest. There was no sign of opposition to the coup. In the meantime, while senior officers were detained, Brigadier Murtala Muhammad, returning from London, was allowed to land at the Kano International Airport. Confident that the coup had been successful, Garba and Ochefu released Lieutenant Colonel William Welby, General Gowon's own man, from detention. Can you see it? All the pieces were falling into place, a sinister puzzle almost complete. The next phase of this sinister operation: to consolidate power and choose a successor. An aircraft was sent around the country to bring senior officers to a military convention in Lagos State. While they did this, Garba was driving around. While listening to his announcement on radio, he was monitoring the situation and inspecting the deployments. Then, at 3 p.m., some of the original musketeers of the coup, Abdullahi Muhammad and Shehu Musa Yaradua, went to pick up this guy for the meeting. The atmosphere at Dodan Barracks was cordial. But it was only at 5 p.m. that the junta, as they called themselves, actually informed everyone of their plans. They explained that despite being junior, Murtala Muhammad was to be head of state, with Obasanjo as chief of staff and Danjuma as chief of army staff. Gowon's chief security officer was made Inspector General of Police. The new regime was established. Senior officers, unarmed and surrounded, accepted the coup. Later that night, at 10 p.m., the new leaders met with key plotters at Brigadier Murtala Muhammad's house to finalize arrangements. Back in Kampala, Gowon spent his day quietly. He received visits from President Ahidjo of Cameroon and other African leaders, but no one offered any real help, military assistance to retake control. This is probably because Nigeria, as you know, is a sovereign nation, and any military intervention from any country would be considered an act of war. I bet none of those African countries would risk going to war with the giant of Africa over an issue that doesn't directly benefit them. He played squash to clear his mind, but remained focused on Nigeria. When the BBC announced that Brigadier Murtala Muhammad was to lead the new regime, Gowon immediately realized Muhammad and Garba were involved, and that even people he counted on for support, like Danjuma, had joined. The full list of the Supreme Military Council and new governors confirmed the extent of the conspiracy. At Brigadier Murtala Muhammad's house in Lagos State, Nigeria, key coup plotters like Garba, Yaradua, and others were assigned political positions, after initially claiming they didn't want any roles in the new government. Garba, however, rejected his appointment. Back in Kampala, Gowon realized there was no point in resisting. He wanted to ensure no further bloodshed. Dressed in traditional attire, he called an international press conference. He began by quoting Shakespeare, saying, "All the world's a stage." He then delivered a pre-prepared speech, and with that speech, General Gowon concluded his last 24 hours as Nigeria's military head of state. He subsequently went into exile in the United Kingdom. But think about it, the way that day had played out, the conspiracy behind it all, and the speed of execution. Where were the cracks that no one saw? What could have been done differently? Subscribe, leave your thoughts, like this video, and come back for the next episode. You know what? Thank you for watching. See you soon.